Never in all my time at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock, and her glass flashed furiously. How dare you! Might have broken your neck. It wasn't his fault, Professor. Be quiet, Miss Batil. But Malfoy! That's enough, Mr. Weasley. Potter, follow me now. Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, triumphant face as he laughed, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as she strode toward the castle. He was going to be expelled. He just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping all along without even looking at him. He had jogged to keep up. Now he'd done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He'd be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursleys say when he turned up on the doorstep? Up the front step, up the marble staircase inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. He wrenched open behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid expelled but allowed to stay on as gamekeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as he imagined it. Watching Ron and the other became enraged while he stomped around the grounds, carrying Hagrid's bag. Professor McGonagall stopped outside the classroom. She opened the door and poked her head inside. "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick. Could I borrow wood for a moment?" Wood? Thought Harry, bewildered. Was it wood a cane she was going to use on him? But Wood turned out to be a person, a burly 50-year-old boy who came out of Flitwick's class looking confused. "Follow me, you two," said Professor McGonagall. As they marched on up on the corridor, Wood looking curiously at Harry. In there, Professor McGonagall pointed them into a classroom that was empty except for Phoebus, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Piffs!" she barked. Piffs threw the shark into the bin, which jangled loudly, and he swooped out cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind them and turned to face the two boys. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall crisply. "The boy is a natural. I've never seen anything like this. Was that you first time on the broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue what was going on, but it didn't seem to be expelled, and some of the feelings started coming back to his leg. He caught that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive. Professor McGonagall told Wood. "Didn't even scratch himself. Surely Weasley couldn't have done it." Wood was now looking as though all his dreams had come true at once. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" he asked excitedly. "Wood's captain of Gryffindor team," Professor McGonagall explained. "He just the built for a seeker too," said Wood, now walking around Harry and staring at him. "Light, Speedy. We'll have to get him a decent broom, Professor. Nimbus 2000 or Cliff Sweep 7, I'd say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can ban the first-year rule. Heavens now, we need a better team than last year. Flattened in that last match by slithering. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks. Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glass at Harry. I want to hear your tiny heart, Potter, or I may change my mind to punishing you. Then she suddenly smiled. Your father would have been proud, she said. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself. You're joking? It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he'd left the ground with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway to his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. Sika, he said, but first is never. You must be the youngest house player in about a century, said Harry, shoveling pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after the excitement of the afternoon. Wood told me. Ron was so amazed, so impressed. He just sat and gaped at Harry. I start training next week, said Harry. Only don't tell anyone. Would want to keep it a secret. Fred and George Weasley now came in the hall, spotted Harry and hurried over. Well done, said George in a loud voice. Wood told us we're on the team too. Bitters. I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year, said Fred. We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us. Anyway, we've got to do. Lee Jordan reckons he found a new secret passage out of this school. Bet it's that one behind the statue of Gregory this Mary that we found in our first week. See ya. Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up. Malfoy flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles? You're a lot braver now that you're back on the ground. And you've got your little friends with you, said Harry coolly. There was, of course, nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle. But as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. I take you on any time on my own, said Malfoy. Tonight, if you want. Wizard duel. One's only, no contact. That's the matter. Never heard of a wizard duel before, I suppose. Of course he has, said Ron, wheeling around. I'm his second. Who's yours? Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. Crabbe, he said. Midnight all right. We'll meet you in the trophy room. There's always unlocked. When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each of them. What's the wizard duel? Said Harry. And what do you mean? You my second? Well, a second is there to take over if you die, said Ron casually, getting started at last on his cold pie. Catching the look at Harry's face, he added quickly, but people only die in purple duels. You know, the real wizards, the most you and Malfoy I'll be able to do is send spurs to each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse anyway. And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens? Throw it away and punch him on the nose, Ron suggested. Excuse me, They both looked. It was Hermione Granger. "Can people eat in peace in this place?" said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. "I couldn't help overhearing that you and Malfoy were saying." "But you could," Ron muttered, "and you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think you the points you'll lose Gryffindor if you're caught, and you're bound to be. It's really, really selfish of you." "And it's really none of your business," said Harry. "Goodbye," said Ron. "All the same, it wasn't what you'd call the perfect end of the day," Harry thought, as he lay awake much later listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Neville wasn't back from his hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving his advice, such as, "If he tries to curse you, you better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them." There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Filch or Mrs. Norris, and Harry felt was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneered face kept looming up of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. "11:30, Ron muttered at last. "We'd better go." They pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wand, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the porridge hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. "I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry." A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. "You," said Ron furiously. "Go back to bed." "I almost told your brother," Hermione snapped. "Percy, he's a perfect. He'd put a stop to this." Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. "Come on," he said to Ron. He pushed open the porridge out to Fat Lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portico, hissing down like an angry goose. "Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourselves? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about the switching spells. Go away." "All right, but I warned you. You just remember what I say. When you're on the train home tomorrow, you're so." But what they were, they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the Fat Lady to go back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The Fat Lady had gone a nighttime visit, and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Tower. "Now what am I going to do?" she asked cheerily. "That's your problem. We've got to go. We're going to be late."